So welcome, Ankush. And a place I like to start with these is to ask, what first sparked your interest in becoming a coach?
Hey Jamie, it's a great question. I feel like I've told this story a few times, but it's where
Probably to
we
me a few times, but
yeah,
it's always good to refresh the memory.
it's a good place to start. I got into personal development when I was 19, and it was always a hobby. It became kind of my main hobby in my 20s. But it was a hobby. It was a passion. It was never something I even considered doing anything with professionally. I used what I learned in my corporate job, but that's where it was at. And then in 2010, I did an online program. And one of the things about that program was about finding your vision, finding your passion, finding what you want to do. There's lots of programs like that out there.
Mm.
And they said, and if you don't know what it is, then that's your vision, that's your purpose to find out what it is that you want to do.
Got it.
And I spent a couple of years, trying things out. I went traveling a lot. I got into photography a little bit, just various things. Thought about doing the same job, but maybe moving overseas, and nothing really kind of landed. But I had a couple of years trying to figure things out, and then eventually I was like, I'm done trying to figure this out. It's taken too long. It's been a couple of years. So this weekend I'm just gonna think it out. And so I came home on
I was reading about this in your book, actually. Because you tell the story in Sweet Sharing.
yeah, so on Friday I get home and I'm like, all right. And I did nothing the whole weekend from Friday to Sunday except think about what I wanted to do with my life. Literally, you know, apart from going to the bathroom, eating food, that was it. It was
Mm.
just spent entire time thinking, 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 and I just went around in circles and circles and circles, and was coming out with statements like, "My purpose is to live a life of purpose." It's like didn't mean anything. Um, and I got to Sunday evening, and I realized I hadn't got anywhere. So I was a bit frustrated, but I was like, "All right, let me leave it." Went to work the next day, thought I'm no worse off than I was on Friday, and forgot about it. And then that evening, I was cooking vegetable fajitas, and I had a eureka moment. You could say God spoke to me because I had this voice that said you should be a coach, and
Mm.
that hadn't even made the short list. It hadn't made the long list. I hadn't really considered coaching, but it kind of made sense. And it was a big decision, or it felt like a big decision. So I spoke to a few friends like, am I really gonna like go and change careers and do this thing that seemed very, very unsafe? And everyone I spoke to, all my friends were like, yeah, we can totally see you doing that. That makes a lot of sense. Um, and so next thing I know, I'm starting looking at different options, doing a master's program or whatever. One of them was doing your program that you were selling at the time. And I remember even in that conversation, you're like, Kush, a lot of people who set out on coaching don't really want to be a coach, or they don't end up successful as a coach. And I went, yeah, Jamie, that's fine. That's not me. And you
Right.
said something along the lines of, yeah, I got a feeling it's going to be different for you. So
I still
from the
remember that.
from the moment I had the eureka moment, it was like 10 days later or something like that, that I'd paid over what was at the time the most money I'd ever paid for any course or training. And I was signed up to a year-long program with you to become a coach.
Yeah, thanks,
And it
man.
just happened very, very quickly. And as they say, that was 2012. The rest is history.
Something struck me in there, and it was the thing that really hit me as I was listening to your story. Well, there are a couple of things. One of them is I do remember having that sense like it wasn't just a nice idea for you. You'd seen something that kind of spoke to your heart. And also, like there's a way in which you're, 2 days of thinking it out and then dropping it and the insight coming to you as you cooked vegetable fajitas was kind of a precursor of things to come in terms of the nature of realization and the journey you've been on since. I mean, uh, for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, they can read your book or my books or whatever. But I know one of the things that I'm curious to hear more about, and that's very alive for you at the moment, is your vision for the coaching industry and your vision for raising the consciousness of humanity through coaching. So uh, I guess my starting point for that would be, where did that come from? Was it like an insight that came to you, like the desire to do coaching, or was it did it come from somewhere else? How did that grab you?
That's such a great question, and yeah, that insight back in 2012 was a precursor to come. And I mean, for a while, I'd realized that, I can start trusting my intuition more, but that was the strongest time I'd heard it. And then over the years, I just kept following that. So now let me take you back to 2012 for a second. At the time, in my mind, if I made £30,000 a year, I'd worked out like I could go and live in a low cost country and just live my life. And I wasn't planning on getting married, wasn't planning on having kids. I had very modest outlook. That I didn't start off like wanting to change the industry or have big
Right.
ambitions. It was just very, very modest. But I just kept following my nose. And after a few years, I had another insight around being at the forefront of doing this inside out work, or called the three principles, and being at the and when I spoke that, I was in one of your training courses. I watched myself say the words. There didn't seem like there was any conscious thought in between.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing came with this raising the consciousness of the planet. I run a school for coaches, and in the first module in September, I had nothing planned. Right, so my colleague saying to me, "Hey, how are you going to kick off the weekend?" I'm like, "Let's find out." And I stand up, and I find myself saying, "This was not planned." I find myself saying, "This school isn't here to help you be a better coach,
Mm.
and you'll be a better coach at the end. This school isn't here to help you make more money." And that's when a few eyebrows got raised because all the marketing was around that. But you will make more money. This school uh, is about raising the consciousness of the planet through changing the coaching industry. And, everyone in the room was like, whoa. And in my head, I was like, whoa, did I just say that? But it was so aligned, and it kind of came through me. And I felt like I was a vessel for this message. And again, at the time, I had no idea how that was going to happen. But I'd been listening to this voice now for long enough that there's something that's bigger than me, whether you want to call it the
Mm.
universe, whether you want to call it divine wisdom, whether you want to call it God, whether you want to call it intuition. There's something, and I know now when that voice speaks, just to keep following that,
Mm.
and it works out. And that's now been happening with this vision of raising the consciousness of the planet for 7, 8 months, and it's amazing how it's evolved. And I could not have predicted that.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me, Ankush. And it there's something about being willing to trust that kind of opens doorways that weren't evident uh, until you made contact with it, until you heard yourself speak it. So I really, really like it. So I know, well, actually, so since then, what you just said is, since then, it's amazing what's happened. What's happened?
Well, at the time, I was like, "Oh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to change the coaching industry? Do I need to, now learn marketing? Do I need a big website? Do I need to now get this out in the world?" And I had no idea, and I was open to everything.
Mm.
And so then a couple of months later, I have the second module of the school. I go back to London, and again, I didn't know what I was going to say, and I find myself saying, and this had been kind of percolating for a while. I realized it wasn't going to happen in my mind through a mass marketing advertising campaign, or something like that. That there's nothing wrong with that. But what came to me was I didn't need to do anything different than I was doing. I I needed to be different. And so what does that mean? It meant that, I ran the school, and in the school there were 36 coaches. And I was like, hey, if I wake every single one of these people up to their true potential, to the fact that any single one of them single-handedly could raise the consciousness of the planet, then this is done. And I started to say, we are going to create global level leaders through this training. That was not in the marketing. That's not what I thought. If someone had told me that's what you got to do, I would have crapped my pants. I was like, how am I going to do that? But it made sense. And I started to see differently. So rather than going, okay, here's a coach, how can we increase their income from this to this? And there's nothing wrong with that. I was like, and let's take someone that we both know, Nick Bottini,
Mhm.
wonderful guy, being in your programs, um, and works in the music industry. And I was like, Nick single-handedly could raise the consciousness of the planet, if he really woke up to his true potential, which he's doing. He's doing wonderful work, by the way, in that music industry. He can single-handedly change the music industry, being a global leader there. And I started seeing that with other people. Daryl Sweeney, who I see as the number one leadership coach in America, or Peter McCammon, someone else that you introduced me to, who you know very well. I was like, I can see him being the best small business coach in Europe. And it's like going up a level, and it's not being more than they're being, in that it's something outside of them. It's waking up to whatever's already there, just as I was waking up to it.
So I really like what you're saying. Help me out with something. When you say if they could wake up to their true potential, or if you could wake them up to their true potential, what, like Nick, for example, has been doing amazing work in the music industry for years. And of course, like any of us, we can all see more deeply what's possible
Mm.
and see through our limitations and that sort of thing. What are you talking about when you say wake them up to their true potential? What do you mean?
So, and I won't talk about any particular person because it's not fair that they're
Sure.
not here. But let's pick someone else. I'll an anonymous person. Let's say there was someone in my coaching school who, so there's a guy I'm thinking of who works in the finance industry. And he makes good money as a coach. He came to the school to keep his professional development, take his learning to the next level. And in his mind, he could, maybe increase his revenue, do better work, etc., etc. But what I found speaking to him, and what he talked about, like really inside, was, he goes, you know what I find? He goes, consistently over the last 20 years, finance professionals have been the least trusted of all the professionals in any profession.
Hmm.
And he said, to me, he goes, it should be the opposite. And he goes, you know what I'd really want? And I said, what's that? He goes, I'd really like financial services and financial services professionals to be the most trusted profession. I want them to be more trusted than anyone else. And so I said to him, and let's call him Bob. That's not his name. I went, Bob, you could do that. And again, his mind went to how do I do that? And I went, no, no, don't get caught up in the how to. Like I didn't get caught up in the how to. Bob, you could be the leader that changes how financial services are seen. In fact, it is you, because you're the one having this idea. So there was a level of impact that I was seeing that coaches could have that was way beyond what they were thinking.
Got it.
And
So
yeah,
here's the thing that I'm trying to facet. What is it that lets you know as a coach that with Bob, for instance, that that's his true potential rather than something else?
great question. Um, I don't. This is what I find really fun about coaching is I get to play with stuff. I give myself 100% leeway to be totally wrong. And sometimes I'm seeing things in coaches going, hey, you could do that. And it's a could.
Mm.
And we just get to play with it. So I'm like, hey, you could do this, this, and this. And it's often at this level beyond what they're seeing as possible for themselves, or often way beyond that. And they might go, you know what, it's not that. But in the conversation, they go, it's not that, but it might be this thing which is similar or related.
Got it.
And we get clear on that. But what it's the conversation really opens them up
Mm,
to what really could be possible for them. And one thing I would like to see, across the board is I think, and I'm making a sweeping generalization, so there's going to be exceptions, but I think coaches, as an industry, as a profession, I don't think overall we've woken up to really the impact we can have globally. I really don't see that. I think coaching more than any other profession, because you said this to me years ago. You said we're impacting children who haven't even been born yet.
yeah.
And so I've been talking recently about our coaching having an intergenerational impact.
Yeah, I'm
That when
sure
coaching,
that's true. I'm sure that's true. I know that, funnily enough, Emma and I were doing a Zoom call with a bunch of people today, and the one of the people on that call, it was a public call, so this isn't confidential. He was telling me that he's really been impacted by clarity and exploring the principles and that sort of thing. He's got two young children. I'm like, man, they are lucky kids. They're growing up in a home where at least one of the adults has seen the truth of who they are and what they've got going for them. And so, yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that.
yeah. And so when coaching is really powerful, like if you coach a CEO powerfully and it's really impactful, you don't just change their life, you change their spouse, their kids who their grandkids that haven't even been born yet.
Their
But
employees,
their employees,
yeah.
their employees' spouses, their employees' kids. I mean, the butterfly effect, as we talk about, a butterfly flaps its wings and there's a hurricane on the other side of the world. I
Mm,
mean, it's phenomenal that we can't even realize.
mm.
And so everyone is talking, or so many people are talking about the world's in a bad state right now. And I don't see the politicians are going to fix that. I don't see the armed services are going to fix that. I don't see any other profession, and there are other wonderful professions. I have nothing against other professions, but I see the profession that can have the biggest positive change is coaching, because we work on such a deep level with people.
Mm.
We get to the essence of who they truly are beyond what's going on in the world, because beyond the circumstances. And I'm sure you've seen this over the years, Jamie. I know you have, as have I. Like people changing to such a degree that someone would call that, impossible or miraculous.
Yeah.
Well, as a profession, if we all wake up to that, like,
Mm.
there's over 100,000 coaches globally, probably over 200,000. Um, man, that's an army. That's like an army of human potential awakeners. And if that gets harnessed, I'm really excited about what that could mean for us globally. I mean, it's a really real big game changer.
Yeah, it makes total sense to me, Ankush. What's your sense of what needs to happen for that to happen? Because the thing I've seen again and again and again uh, with coaches and change workers and therapists and people in that domain is it's very much a case of put your own oxygen mask on first. And so what what's your sense of what needs to happen for that army to be activated, so to speak?
Well, there's a couple of things. One thing that I see, and this is evolving. This is still a very new vision. So
Sure.
you ask me this in 6 months or a year, I'm gonna have probably new things to say. But as of right now, I think when you look at the latest industry reports, for example, coaching is growing. I think in the last 3 years, the ICF has said we've gone from 79,000 coaches globally to 110. I don't know if it's 3 years or 5 years, but I mean, it's exponentially growing the industry. And if we look at the earnings, it's going in the wrong direction. The average earnings from coaching is going less. Now, what I've seen is to be a not only well-paid coach, but to have that be sustainable, and have that as a sustainable business, that it ties into what you're saying. There's certain things that coaches need to have in place. They need to be coaching a lot. They need to be on this path of continual growth and improvement. Um, they need to be delivering a level of service that frankly goes way, 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 way beyond what a lot of people are taught in coach trainings. And I have nothing against, a lot of coach trainings, but there's a lot that is missing that, I learned from you, and I learned from Steve Chandler, and I learned from Keith Levins, like over 10 years. I picked up from various places, and I'm like, this isn't commonly understood. So I think there's that piece of, I'm not just talking about helping coaches make money, but I'm like, help make it ethically, help make
Mhm.
it, professional standards. Basically, that needs to be put in place. And so I'm trying to do that through my school, and I'm trying to do that by creating lots and lots of role models, because I know when I started out, there was very, very few role models of coaches who were having successful, prosperous businesses, who were running it ethically,
Mhm.
who I wanted to emulate. So I'm changing that, and I'm encouraging. It doesn't have to just be me. I'm encouraging anyone who wants to join this vision. I'm like, it's not my vision, it's
Mhm.
our vision. Join me, and let's all do our bit to help that happen. That's the first piece. The second piece is this thing around global level impact. I haven't heard anyone really talk about that, and maybe people are, and maybe I've missed it. But I hear coaches talk about making six figures, making seven figures. I'm not interested in talking about that, and I'm not saying it's not important. But I am now seeing. I was talking to Johannes Metzler, again, another client of yours, former client of yours, come through your programs. Wonderful guy, and I work with him, and I said something to him in my last school. I'm like, Johannes, do you see you could employ dozens of coaches and have a 200 million euro a year business? And he kind of like fell backwards. But I'm really seeing that, because when I look at business consultancies, they all started somewhere and they are huge businesses, but no one's doing that for coaching yet. Well, why couldn't it be someone like Johannes? In fact, I'd say he's more qualified than one of these other businesses or consultancies, because coaching's different. That's the level of impact I'm talking on a global level, like far reaching.
Got
We're
it.
in a very early stage of coaching. The profession is yet to really be established. So
It-
everything's to play for.
we are, though there are large coaching organizations out there that employ lots of coaches. I don't think it's entirely accurate to say no one else is doing that. I know that if Johannes was to do that, it would bring a level of depth and impact to it that's far beyond anything I see happening out in the world. That's for sure. So you're very right. It's early, and there is all to play for. Something I'd like to ask you about, though. So I was reading an article by Mark Andreessen, who's one of he's a co-founder of Andreessen Horowitz, big venture capital firm. He was one of the co-founders of Netscape, the original web browser. So he invented hyperlinks that you click when you're scrolling the web. Anyway, this article was called "Why AI is going to Save the World," and I got to this line, and he said, every person will have an AI assistant, coach, mentor, trainer, advisor, therapist that is infinitely patient, infinitely compassionate, infinitely knowledgeable, and infinitely helpful. The AI assistant will be present through all of life's opportunities and challenges, maximizing every person's outcomes. So I was thinking deeply about that. And I was looking at my phone and I thought, yeah, that's where it would live. It would live in a person's phone. And I was looking at an article about Google's Palm app, which was a medical diagnosis app. And they found that the majority of people preferred being diagnosed by the app rather than a real doctor. And then, so I've been asking lots of coaches, what do you think the impact of AI on coaching is? Do you think that AI is going to that it's going to cannibalize coaching, or, cut a swath through it, or what's going to happen? And what people generally say is, oh, people will always want to talk to a human being. But then I look at the AI video stuff that's happening, and then they can already create video interaction that's indistinguishable from a human being. And so I'll land the plane in a second. So my question is this, like, I know when Airbnb first came out, everyone's initial response was, I'm not going to sleep on a stranger's sofa. But now everyone does because it's convenient. When Uber came out, it's like, I'm not going to ride around in a stranger's car, but it's really convenient. I can see something like that getting massive adoption. And so the question I have is, with if there's massive adoption of, let's assume some kind of AI phone-based coach, is that gonna increase the influx of people who want coaching from a human being? Is it going to help spread a vision for the impact that coaching can have? Is it going to open people up to more of that? What's your sense of that?
It's such a great question, Jamie. And to be honest, I don't know, and I don't think anyone knows. If we're really honest, no one knows. It's going to be a fun ride and to watch it. I'm not scared of AI. I'm already seeing the impact of AI is helping me and my team do stuff that we just weren't able to do before, because it's bringing costs down. So
Mm,
even if we look at levels of like transcribing
mm,
and doing stuff with video and getting our message out, it's really, really, really helpful.
mm,
Um, I think, like you, I can see there being a place for that, and then whether it's on a phone or who knows what we're going to interact with, whether things in the sky or whatever, like Minority Report,
mm,
um, the world's going to change,
mm,
and I believe there will always be a place for human interaction, but not everybody will want that, and I just don't know, you know. I think right now it's very, very difficult to program because someone's going to have to program something to program a really impactful coaching session because I don't even know what I do.
mm,
It's and yes, could you program something to go through the grow model? Yeah, that you could probably get that, and you could get something to ask questions and use an algorithm to figure that out. But I think with the best coaching, and dare I say it, it's almost spiritual. It's led by some deeper intelligence, and I don't know, and I might be wrong. I don't know if AI is going to replace that or completely replace that. And I don't know what the impact is. And like I said, for me right now, I'm just following where I'm being guided to go. And I see that there's something deeper guiding me towards that this needs to change. And
mm,
I hope that whatever technology gets developed, we can harness it and use it for the betterment of ourselves, of our profession, of humankind. And you know what? At the end of the day, if what turns out to be in 10 years' time is this profession dies because we don't need it, well, you know what? There's worse things that could happen. Better than dying of a nuclear Armageddon.
yeah.
And I'm sure we'll figure something else out at that time.
Well, it's
I
funny
don't,
you say
yeah.
that because my dream has long been that we reach a point where I'm going, yeah, it works from the inside out. And everyone's like, yeah, we know. We know. Shut up, professor. We know. We know. That would be wonderful. I'd love to be out of a job like that. Um, I agree with you on almost all of that about AI. My sense is that there are human factors in coaching that are going to be profoundly difficult for AI to replace. Having said that, like I've written scripts for AI that produce a way better level of questioning uh, than many coaches I've seen and worked with over the years. So it's not that difficult to create a pretty good AI coach bot. Um, but I, like you, I do think that there are human factors that are going to be very difficult to replace. Funnily enough, I think one of those human factors is a heart-centered vision, like the one you describe. I think that vision that you've described a world where the consciousness is raised through the power of coaching. I think that is profoundly spiritual and profoundly human in its expression. So it's great to hear it. And I think as well, I'd be interested in your take on this actually. I think also skill, like there are what I notice about the best coaches, they have a high level of skill. What's your sense? I mean, you've worked with some of the best coaches in the world. What's your sense of the role of skill in all of this?
Yeah, I do see a role of that. So on one hand, understanding the inside out nature of reality is not uh it's not like a mastery process as I think I've heard you say before. And there's a level of skill, there's a level of experience. So I just finished wrapping up one of my immersion events. I run these twice a year for men, and it was my 19th one. Time flies, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And and I'm gonna embark on my 20th. Every time I run these, I learn something. And it could be like little things to like, oh, that I remember once we were using these handouts, and we're like, oh, these handouts could be better. And it's a small thing, but they all add up, these changes, and then I'm constantly growing. So every time I run one of these, I'm different. And so that experience and skill, it makes a difference. And when I think about some of the people we both know and have worked with, like Mark Howard and Keith Blevins, I've seen them evolve over the years.
Mm.
And there are certain things that they've learned on the job through having thousands of hours of coaching or mentoring or consultancy, whatever you call the work. Having that under your belt, you can't. I don't think you can shortcut that. There is something to be said for that. And my coach is an amazing guy called Steve Hardison. He's my current coach, and he says, if I'm the same at the end of a coaching session as I am at the start of it, then I haven't done my job right. And I see that that's not just words he speaks. Every time I meet him, I can tell he's grown and evolved, and I love that. It really draws me to working with him because it's always fresh. It's always something new and different. And I think that's true of the best coaches, that they are perpetual learners.
Mm.
Um, so, I mean, AI can learn as well. I'm not saying it can't, but there is something about that.
Yeah, AI can learn and it's not constrained by time in the way human beings are. But I do think that there's something that the best coaches bring that is, it's hard to define, and so it's hard to codify. But you know it when you see it. So what are, so
Yeah.
go on.
And what I will say is, I think what one thing that AI will do is it will raise the bar for coaches. Like
I think
I mean,
so.
it's tough to be a really average coach and do well anyway. Like
Yeah,
it's hard enough. It will make that harder. So I think
yeah,
it will force the profession to raise the standards, which I think is a good thing, because you'll have to. You now, let's say we get this AI bot, which probably will come out very soon. Well, you're gonna have to be 10 times better than the bot, which is probably gonna be free or very cheap for people to pay you. So
yeah.
it will force a rise in standards, I feel.
I totally agree. I think that's very, very likely to be the case. So what are you were talking about learning, what are some of the things that are kind of big discoveries, insights, realization, or not so big, but things that are really fresh for you, like today? What's showing up for you as we sit here right now?
Uh, One of the things that's kind of been in the background for a long time, but I never really studied it. Like I never really studied NLP or hypnosis or anything like that. But I've been waking up more and more to the power of language. And I've been
Mm,
saying for years that our language betrays us.
mm,
That when people might think certain things, but when they speak, the language is giving away actually how they see the world, actually how
sure.
they think, actually how they are. And I'm seeing how language also creates our reality right now. And I've been noticing this more and more with clients where they'll say, I get really, really annoyed when my wife does this. And what I've been seeing is that hey, if you keep saying that over and over again, you're actually looking out for that. You're creating more of that. You're hypnotizing yourself to
Yeah,
see that. And I'm seeing that on a level that I've never seen before. So now I'm offering to clients that they can change their language and just say, "Oh, I used to." Because as
yeah,
soon as you say "I used to," you're creating a new space to say, "Oh, as of today, I'm going to make it different. I'm going to change it." And it's not just like a sleight of mouth. It's I'm really seeing it changes, and it's really helped me. And I see this everywhere from the gym. Um, my personal trainer is a great guy, and he's like, we don't say no, we don't say can't. Um, and it's not just like a macho thing. I notice it really makes a difference in the way that I use language in the gym and how I use it anywhere in life. So it's kind of been a funny thing of someone who was never really drawn to learning NLP or hypnosis or language patterns. Now in a kind of totally different way, I'm really appreciating language and the power of it in a way that I never had before.
yeah. Well, as you know, I'm absolutely fascinated with language, and I think there's a very real way in which language is almost a kind of software that programs our reality. And so the willingness and ability to be conscious of it and to notice it. Like I find that the words people use are, speaking to you as a coach, the words people use are the most reliable gateway into understanding their world and to making changes in that world. But also it's one of the most reliable, spontaneous indicators of someone's reality having shifted. So what I'll typically do is I'll do a piece of work with them, and then I'll wait to see, does their language shift without them even noticing it? Because for most people, things like word choice and that sort of thing, they're out of consciousness. They're not consciously aware of it. And so if that shifts without them even noticing it, that's a sign that something's already shifted at a deep level.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just such a powerful domain to explore. So, Ankush, obviously, if I was to ask you, what are you excited about to create and that sort of thing, the your vision is front and center in that. Is there anything else that's on the horizon for you at the moment, or is it mostly just about the things we've been talking about?
Yeah, it's well, I have been working on a book which is going very, very slow, but it's a book that I've been writing for a few years around my journey from the time that, we started working together and the first few years of how I transitioned over coaching out of my corporate job and into coaching full time. So and I think that is in alignment with my vision.
Hmm.
I'm gearing up for the third cohort of my coaching school, and really really excited to get going with publicizing that. I really am a big believer that a rising tide lifts all boats. I mean, we've spoken about that. Um, I don't see any competition in the industry. I think coaches, we can all work together to raise each other up.
Mhm.
Um, I think a word that we've both used is compersion, and that's a real
Yeah,
big cultural piece in my school in terms of being happy when another coach is doing well and
yeah,
not kind of coming from this competitive place. Um, and it's just exciting. I love this profession. I
mhm.
kind of pinch myself that I get to do this work every day, especially when I look back kind of 12 years ago now when I was trying to figure out what to do with my life.
Yeah,
It's just a real joy. It's really great fun um, to be able to impact people's lives in a way that fundamentally changes the course of their life. I mean, what a privilege to do this work.
yeah, it
So
really is. It
it's
really
great.
is. And it's been amazing to watch your journey and to see your development and evolution in what you're doing and what you're bringing to the world, and how many other coaches and clients you're supporting in the process. So Ankush, that's all we've got time for today, but where should people go if they want to find out more about you, about the school, about your vision, about the Powerful Men's immersions? Where's the best place to find out about all that?
So, well, I want to say two things. Firstly, I want to thank you, Jamie, because kind of my coaching journey is very much aligned and intertwined with you. So, I want to thank you for really being there at the start of it and guiding me and setting me on the right path. So, want to make sure we don't get to the end of this without that really thanking you for that.
I
Um,
appreciate that, Ankush. Thank you.
and in terms of where people can find me, I think the best place where everything is, in one place is my website, which is Ankush Jain, ANKUSHJAIN.co.uk. And from there, there's links to YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and all the usual stuff, email list. But that's the central place to check everything out.
Great. Well, thanks again, Ankush. It's great to see you, man.
Likewise, buddy.